Hello and welcome to NUK227 Python for Nuke and Gizmology. My name is Victor Perez and I will be your teacher for these 10 classes to explore together Python applied to Nuke to create your own tools and gizmos. The first thing is, what is Python? Well, Python is an scripting and programming language. You can even create your own software using the Python language, but no worries, because we are going to focus on the scripting area, which means we are going to use the language to interact with Nuke to perform certain functions. The cool thing about Python is that the language is human readable, which means we can understand what's going on line by line in the code. It's just like, more or less, plain English. Another cool thing that we have in Python is that piece of code we are going to execute does not need to be compiled. So we are just going to write and execute. And believe me, that is really easy, because if you need to compile the script before to execute, you are going to waste a lot of time. And in here, everything is going to be like an input-output directly from the feedback of the software. It's going to be really easy once you know the language to interact with the software. That is what I'm here for. I'm going to teach you in the first half of the course how to interact with the language in order to perform your own ideas inside the script editor of Nuke, so you can just go directly from your idea to the language. Okay? So this is going to be more or less like learning again as a child how to write and how to read. I'm going to focus on how to read the scripts, because it's going to be really helpful for you that once you know how to read, you open other people's scripts and you can learn from them how they put the stuff together. In my case, was the best way of learning, and also you can modify those scripts in order to accommodate to your own needs. So that is going to be the main focus of the course. The Gizmology area is going to be focused on the application of the Python language and other features in order to create your own tools. Let's start by giving you a few inputs where you can find more information about Python, because what I want is for you, once you finish my course, you need to keep going and expanding your knowledge. So we are not going to stop just in the 10 classes of this course. So in order to keep going, I'm going to give you a few suggestions of websites and books that maybe are going to help you to increase your knowledge. So in here, I have the most important website you can get for Python. That is the official Python documentation website. Let me spend a word about the version we are going to use during this course, because at the present time of this recording, Nuke is at the version 8.0, version 5, and Python 2.x is at 2.7.8. Okay, so those are going to be my references for this course. Something to keep in consideration is we are not going to use Python 3.x, because that is a very different update that is not going to be retrocompatible with our 2.7 version, and Nuke is still not supporting version 3 of Python. And that's not a terrible thing, it's just the way we are going to perform the operations needs to fit with the language at this stage. Okay? So the main thing in here is that you have all the documentation in just one place. Of course, sometimes it's going to be tricky to find the piece that you need. So something that I suggest is you just go to Google or your search engine and search for the question you have. But this is the main resource for Python. You will find in the files of this class all the pages I'm suggesting, so no worries on taking the names from here. So this is the Python documentation for version 2.7.8, and then in here I just put a shortcut to the language reference, and in here you have also the standard library. Another resource is going to be the Foundry Nuke Python Developers Guide. Okay, so in here you have all the documentation related to Python applied to Nuke. So you have even a few tutorials and stuff, and it's really good because you get everything in one single place. Okay, another one is going to be the forum for the Python language applied to Nuke. This is by the Foundry, so you can just ask questions to the community and the community is going to reply, and you can even reply when you are getting a good level. Okay, so this is a very good resource. And of course, Nukipedia. If you don't know it, Nukipedia is the most important community about Nuke for exchanging tools, Python scripts, articles, receipts, whatever. Everything is in here. So it's a very good resource to find gizmos to open and learn, and even to modify them just to accommodate for your own needs. You can even publish your own in here, okay? So have a look at the website and subscribe. Of course, it's free. Okay, for this course, I'm not going to follow any manual. So I'm going just to freely apply the basics of the language for you to learn to read and write. But if you want to learn more or just get a more in-depth view of the language, I suggest you this book, which is Learning Python by Mark Lutz, and it's really good. It's quite a heavy book, but no worries because it's really easy to read. You know, is, in my opinion, the best resource on books that you have out there. Another thing we are going to need, of course, because we are programming, is a scripting software. You know, the scripting software is just going to be an easy choice because, to be honest with you, you just need a text editor. The nice thing about a script editor is that it's providing you with more tools for analyzing your script and just organizing everything to get a happy experience while you are writing. But it's nothing that you are not going to get with just the text edit in Mac, for instance, this thing, or the Notepad in Windows. You just need to be aware that your script cannot be formatted. So there are no fonts or font size or paragraphs or whatever. It's just plain text. Okay? Of course, if you have a script editor, that is going to help you because it's going to be clearer to understand the lines of codes. Okay? Even in Nuke, you can script, but I'm not going to recommend you that because the script editor inside Nuke is quite basic. And something that are going to miss in here a lot is the lines of code. Because when I'm writing in here, I don't know what is the line I'm writing because there are no guides in here. With a script editor, that is a must. So I'm going to use TextWrangle for this course, but you can use the one of your choice. I'm going to give you a few suggestions in a moment, but have a look at this. When I have my code in here, I know very well what's the line I'm writing on. Why is this important? Well, when you are getting an error in line 3, that is going to be easy to count in here, 1, 2, and 3. But when you are getting an error in line 250, that is going to be a bit tricky just to be counting in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in here, with a text editor that is optimized for scripting is going to give you the line of the code. So when you are getting the error, you know where to go to fix it. And getting errors, believe me, is quite easy because just a typo, it can ruin everything. So it's a very good thing just to have this simple thing as the lines of code. And of course, the formatting of the script is going to be really nice because it's going to provide you a certain color for a string, a certain color for a function, and so on. Okay? My choice for this course is going to be Text Wrangle, but I'm going to give you a few other suggestions. Feel free to use your own choice. The first of the listing here is Notepad++. Okay? You can download it. It's free. And another is going to be Komodo Edit. Okay, the Komodo Edit is a free version of the Komodo IDE. Again, it's going to provide you exactly the same capabilities of any other script editor. If you are in Linux, probably Kate is going to be your choice. It's the most common that you can find out there. Again, for Mac, I'm using Text Wrangle. So now let's have a look at the script editor inside Nuke. If you don't have it by default, because I customize my GUI, you can just get it in here. Just click in one of the corners, and in here you get the script editor. Okay. Mainly for the course, I'm not going to need the viewer because I'm mostly getting interaction between the values and the node graph. And about the script editor, as you can see here, we have two windows, okay? The one below is the input window, is where we are going to put the script, and the one on top is the output, is the one that is going to give us the result of our script. For instance, if I do a print hello world and I execute this, the result of this is going to be displaying here. But how can I just execute that? Well, in here on top you have those icons, okay? So this one in here, this arrow, is going to execute. Of course, it's going to be quite tricky just to be clicking all the time, just taking the mouse or the tablet. But instead of pressing the buttons in here, I'm going to use the hotkeys. So the hotkey for executing a command in here is going to be Command or Control if you are in Windows, and Enter. So here you are. Now, here on top is just displaying my script, whatever I put in here. And then is executing this line that is a comment. How do I know that this is a comment? Well, it's having this sign. When you are getting the hash, that line is going to be a comment, which means it's not going to be executed by the language. It's just displaying a text for you to read. Okay, so in here, this line is just going to tell me that the lines below are the result of my script on top. Okay, so the result of that print hello world is going to be hello world. Okay, if I want to clear this, I can press this icon in here. Okay, so as soon as I press, it's going to clear everything here on the output window. We have also another modality, which is everything is an input window, in case you just want to write and you don't care about the output. Or the other way around, you can just get everything as the output. We are going to work most of the time with the split, so we are getting the input and the output. When you are working just comping normally, so I'm going to assume you are an artist, you can just get here in the output window all the commands you are executing by echoing those commands into Python scripting. How can you do that? Well, you go to the preferences. If you are in Windows, the preferences are here below on Edit, but in Mac, as you know, here on Preferences, you go to the Script Editor, and in the Script Editor, you can modify also the font and the size, and here you have these echo Python commands to output window. So if I click this, and now I close, if I call a blur node, something like this, now in here is getting the function just to create this blur. So that is a very nice way of learning how to do things. So you know that now, if you want to create a blur, you need to write nuke.create node, and in brackets you put the blur. But no worries, we are going to review everything from scratch just to understand what's the meaning of every single word in here. Okay, so even if I delete now, it's going to give me the operation to delete a node. Okay, I'm going to deactivate this for the time being because it's going to be quite distracting, but feel free to use it. So in here, now I'm going to clear this, and in here, next to the split, we are going to get those options, which are save, load, and execute. What's the meaning of that? Well, if I want to create something like print again hello world, and now I want to save this as my script, I can just go here and save. I'm going to my desktop, and I'm going to put my script. And have a look at the extension in here. Is .py. That's the extension for a Python script. Maybe you can see when you are exploring by your own .pyc. What's the .pyc? It's a compiled version. And just a few minutes ago, I just told you that Python does not need to be compiled. Well, that's true, but when Python is compiled, it's going to be way faster than the normal script version. So that's why certain programs, like Nuke for instance, when we are just customizing the GUI, is going to compile the Python scripts just to increase the performance of the software, okay? But we are going to preserve, in any case, both files, the py and the pyc. Anyway, we are going to save always as .py. Okay, I suggest you, when you are working with Python, to put the extension always, because when you are just working inside the Nuke interface, it's going to be automatically by default. But if you are working with a third-party script editor, you are not going to get any extension, and that is going to confuse the software because it has no language predefined. So always put on your scripts the .py extension. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and now it's saved. I'm going to clear this, and if I want to load whatever I said before, I'm going here, open, and here you are. But instead of just loading, let's load and execute. So in here, my script, open, and now as you can see there is nothing in here, but automatically has been launched. Okay, so the result is in the output window. Okay, so I can also just go back in here in my history and see what's my latest comment, because every time I'm going to execute something and that is going to work, in here is going to disappear. So you can just go back and recall whatever was your latest, or even go back and back. Right now I just have the print hello world, but if I want to print another thing like red, I press that, so in here I get my previous statement, and now I get my second statement. So if I go back in my history, I go red and if I go back again, I go with hello world. Again, I can go now forward. And instead of doing that, I prefer to use the hotkeys. And the hotkey for that is command or control and square brackets. So open if you want to go back, and close if you want to go forward. Okay, and in here you are going to clean your history, so with that you cannot go back or forward anymore. Okay, so I'm going to clean that, and now my script editor is exactly as in the beginning. Be careful, because there are no autosaves or anything that are going to prevent you to lose your data in case the software crashes or something happens. So that's why I prefer to write in a third-party script editor. In here is really good for testing and just by ensuring that what you are doing is going to work inside the Nuke environment. Because sadly, when you are performing certain operations that are interacting with the GUI outside Nuke, that is not going to work because you are in another software. So that's why we are going to keep an eye into the script editor when we are working outside, just for testing my own script. So this load and execute is going to be really handy. Let's have a look now at something different from the Python scripting, which are the Nuke Expressions. The Nuke Expressions are really helpful when you need to interact between the knobs inside the GUI. So what we are going to create with the Nuke Expressions are some kind of links between the nodes. So to edit the Nuke Expressions, we are going to create a couple of nodes in here. Just in this instance, it's just a blur, but it's going to work for every kind of node we have in here. And I'm going to edit the expression of the size of this blur. So in here, I click and I have in here the edit expressions. So by default, the expression you are going to write in here is going to be a Nuke expression. And you can do many operations with that, but mainly everything is focused on the linked to other knob inside another node. So the way of calling another knob in here is going to be the name of the node. So let's call blur1 dot the name of the knob we want, which is in this case size. So that is going to create a link between them. So you can see here the expression arrow. But this is so simple. You can also process that and create a mathematical operation. So for instance, multiply the value of the other times 2. So in case I get in here something like a value of 2, in here I'm going to have double that value. Okay, so that is the way of editing the expressions. We are going to have a more in-depth look to the Nuke expressions when we are creating and developing our own gizmos. But this is just a parenthesis, just to make sure that we are not going to confuse Python scripting and Nuke expressions. Okay, just as a reminder, in here you can edit the expressions, but what happened in here in a text input? Well, when you want to get something in here that is going to look at a certain value, what you can put is the expression inside a square bracket. So if I want to put, for instance, the size of this blur2 node, what I'm going to put is value, and that is going to return the resulting value in case you get any expression, like in this instance. I'm going to put the name of the knob, which is size. So in here you are getting the number 4, which is the value. Have a look what happens if I put, instead of value, knob. So if I put knob, the result in here is going to be the expression itself, okay, that is expressing here inside those brackets. Okay, so this is another way of calling the knob. So with this one, you are going to call whatever is writing in here, and with the value, you are going to get the result of whatever is writing in there, that in this case, as you know, is an expression. Okay, so that is Nuke Expressions. But in this first half of the course, we are going to focus mostly on Python. If you want to have an example of Nuke Expressions, I can suggest you one of my notes that you have now inside the class files for this class. You get all these notes just for you to open and modify and redistribute whatever you want to do. Feel free to do it. And in here you get this vSlate. So with the slate, I can tell you that there is no one single line of Python code in here. Everything inside the slate has been done doing Nuke Expressions. So I'm going to convert this gizmo into a group, because you cannot access to a gizmo because it's closed. But if you convert this into a group, you can. So I'm going to edit, note, group, and now copy gizmo to group, or just Shift, Command or Control and G. And that is going to create a duplicate in here, but that is going to be a group. You need to get your gizmo installed inside the GUI in order to make the conversion. No worries, we are going to discuss this in class number 4. So once I have my group, you can press in here the S, and now I'm getting inside the contents of this node. And here you are, all the expressions in here represented with the green arrows. The brown arrows are just cloning lines. Okay, so you can have a look at this, and if you have the patience and the time, just explore all the expressions I put in here just to make this node work. So now let's start digging into the Python language. The first thing we need to analyze is what kind of information can we handle. So the types of information. And we have mainly two kinds of units of information: simple and complex. The simple are just single units, and the complex are just groups of simple units. Okay, so simple units can be numbers or text. So let's start by the numbers. The numbers, or numerical types, can be integers, which are any kind of number that has no fractions, so integer numbers, or the float numbers, any number with a fraction divided by a point, so 10.1 or 20.5 or just 5.0. Even 5.0 is going to be defined as a float, because 5.0 is not equals to 5. So those things are completely different kind of units. Okay, even if the number they are representing is exactly the same, the kind of unit of information is not the same at all. And sometimes we are going to need float numbers, sometimes we are going to need integer numbers. Okay, so we can also perform operations with the numbers inside Python. We can use Python as a calculator. Of course, it's not the most interesting thing to do with the language, but of course you can do it. So 10 plus 5, so execute, is 15, clearly. And what if I mix a float and an integer? So 10 plus 5.0. Well, the result is going to be always a floating number. Okay, so when we are mixing two kinds, there are certain rules. In this case, when you are mixing a float and an integer, the result is going to be always a float. Okay? And now it's time to start talking about the text, or what we call in the language a string. So a string is just a chain of characters. So something like hello world, that could be a string. But in order to be a string, it must be defined by the quotes. So you have two possibilities in here. You can put double quotes or single quotes. So hello world, one single quote. But remember, if you start with one quote, you close with one quote. And if you start with double quotes, you close with double quotes. You cannot just mix them because that makes no sense. And in case you get one inside the other, so for instance, something like my mom said be a good boy. As you can see in here, I can get this inside the other, okay? But everything inside the double quotes is going to be handled as a single string. So if I print this, the result is going to be this thing. So that's why you get two levels of quoting, okay? The important is anything that is inside quotes is going to be considered a string, even a number. So if I put this is not a number anymore. This is just a character in the chain of characters of the string. But I cannot just make this plus this. It's going to return an error because we cannot concatenate a string and integer objects in here, as you can read. So those two units are completely different. So you cannot just sum a string and a number, but you can sum two strings. So one string plus another string. Have a look at this. Let me print. It's going to be 11. So every time you are just putting the plus sign with two strings, the strings are going to be put together. Okay, so it's not going to be calculated as a sum, but it's just going to be put one next to the other. And this is going to be really interesting for us when we are just mixing paths, file directories and stuff. So another thing you can do with strings and number is multiply. So if I have, for instance, 1 times 20, and I print the result is going to be 20 times number 1. But remember, this 1 is not a number, it's a string. So if I put in here hello, it's just going to replicate 20 times the word hello. So integer numbers or floating numbers or strings are just simple units of information. Let's talk now about the complex unit of information. The most important for us, the list. So a list is just an enumeration of elements. And to define a list, you need to put the elements inside square brackets and divide by commas. So I'm going to put hello world as an element, comma, number 1, comma, number 2.0, and so on. So in this list, I'm just mixing a string, an integer, and a floating point number just together. So you can contain anything you like inside your list, okay? It's just a unit. But the list itself is going to be considered as a whole, not as a separation of elements. So when you want to access to one of the elements inside the list, there is a process to get that, because the list itself is just 1 unit. So if I print this, it's going to give me this hello world 1 and 2.0. Another complex unit of information is the dictionary. The dictionary can store for every element an argument. So to define a dictionary, we need the curly brackets, and for each element, like for instance, hello world, I'm going to put a value of 2. Now for red, I'm going to put a value of 5. So now each element in here has a value. Okay, so if I print this, this is going to be the result of this dictionary. Okay, so you get a certain value associated to the element inside the dictionary. Those are the most common complex units of information. You get others, but I'm not going to fool your head right now with information. I just prefer to get the most important and the things we are going to use in the course. So we get lists and dictionaries. The only thing remaining about the units of information in here is the variable. What's a variable? Well, a variable is kind of a container of information. So you can recall whatever is inside the variable by just putting the name of the variable. So imagine that I want to contain this hello world, but I don't want to write every time hello world inside the quotes. So I'm going to put this information inside a variable. So I'm going to call my var, and to define a variable you need to put one sign of equals. And I say one sign because sometimes you can find two signs of equals, but that is something different. Two signs of equals is a comparison, is not a definition of a variable. We are going to see this later in the course. So when I put my var equals to hello world, if I print my var, the result is going to be hello world. So in other words, if I put print my var or print hello world, the result is going to be exactly the same. But my var is going to be faster to write. Okay, we are going to use variables a lot. Why is called a variable? Well, because a variable can change in the course of a script. And something to get in mind is how Python is going to execute my script. Well, it's going to be line by line, from top to bottom, from the left to the right. Okay, so I'm going to get my var defining here by hello world, and once it's defined, now I'm jumping to the second line and it's going to say, hey, print that variable you defined in the previous line. Okay, and now in the third one is going to be, okay, now print hello world. So now the result is going to be that. But what if I put another case, something like my var equals 1, and now I'm going to print my var. Of course, if I execute this, the result is going to be 1. And what if now I put my var equals 2? Now I print my var, and let's have a look at the result. In the first print, the result is going to be 1. In the second print, the result is going to be 2 because I redefine my var. Okay, so that's why it can vary, it can change from one status to another. So it's going to be really interesting just to handle the information inside variables. In order to make it even more complex, I'm going to do this game. So I'm going to put in here, instead of my bar equals 2, I'm going to put my bar is going to be equals my bar plus 1. Let's have a look at the result. So let me clean that and have a look at this. In here, the first one is 1, the second one is 2. Why? Well, let me explain it here. Because by the time of the third line, in here what we have is my bar now is going to be the result of my bar that we are looking in here at the previous line. So in here, my bar is equals to 1. So put my bar in here or put 1 is going to be exactly the same. So 1 plus 1 is going to be 2. That's the result. So in here, my bar is just getting the same result in here. So by the time of the fourth line, my bar is going to get a value of 2. Okay? So that's maybe a bit confusing because you are getting the same value inside the same container, but it's totally fine. You just need to get in mind what's the current value of your variable at the moment you are using that, even if it's inside of the same variable. Okay, so this is all about the units of information. Is just integers, floats, strings, list or dictionaries when we are using the complex ones, and everything can be stored inside a variable. Okay, so we are going to stop here today. For the next class, we are going to start handling the information just to perform certain kinds of operations with them. Okay? If you have any questions, just post them in the forums and I'll reply as fast as possible. I look forward to seeing you there and in the next class. Until next time, this has been Victor Perez for FHPHD. Thanks for watching.